Welcome back to part 3 of our series where we are talking about how to package and distribute our Python projects. Well, I guess we should say packages, but regardless, we'll just keep it the way it is. So in our previous video, we focused pretty much entirely on the Setup.py file. And really the intent of your Setup.py file is it's really used to help define some of the metadata that is sent along with your package when you upload it to PyPi. Additionally, it does provide some pretty important information in terms of dependencies. So what are the modules and packages that you need in order to run this particular project? Additionally, it also does specify the versioning of it. So that way you can specify what changes have been made and at what version you're on. And then additionally, what folders you want to include. So next, we're going to talk a little bit more detail about dependencies. This is easier said than done. So I think many individuals, when you first start going through the whole process of packaging something, right? First, you never know where to start. I didn't know where to start. I had no idea where to start, and I just started going with it, and before I knew it, got somewhere. But a really important topic is dependencies, because your package, depending on how complex it is, it might require multiple other packages in order to run or function properly. So you have to get a list of those dependencies in order to specify them, right? So you have to figure out which dependencies you need. That's easier said than done. There's tools out there that will make that process easier, but I do want to show you at least the standard way of doing it. I'm not going to recommend this way, but it's good to know that, technically this is what Python is asking for in most parts. So again, if you go to the repo on GitHub and you go into the resources and note file, there is a topic called installation requirements. And inside of here, I talk about requirements.txt files. I get a lot of this content directly from the Python website itself. So I do provide some links here as well, but I try to filter it down into stuff that I think is more important to talk about. So there's different ways to build this file, right? So you don't actually have to manually create it. There's automated ways to do it. Some are better than others. So if you go on Python, they're going to talk about using pip, the pip module, in order to create a requirements.txt file. If you use the pip freeze command, basically what it will do is it will generate a list of requirements that are used in this project. When you run this command, though, you have to make sure you specify an output file, right? So on Windows, for example, it's pip freeze. I do my little arrow, and then I do requirements.txt, and then this will be an output, right? So let's do this inside of our particular project and see what our output looks like. And let's see if there's anything wrong with it, or let's just see what do we get, right? Now I already have a requirements.txt file here, so I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to do an _2 just to make my life a little bit easier. I'm going to copy this code, and then I'm going to do my Control-J, and then I'm going to paste it in my terminal, and I'm going to run it. Perfect. And then you get this mess. So it did its job. It did provide us a list. The problem is, though, I can tell you right now, I am definitely not using every single one of these packages in my current one. So what happened was it provided everything. Now, it is also important to know, it doesn't just provide installed packages. If you have some from GitHub, it will provide those as well. It will even provide what we'll call, at this point, editable installations, editable installations. Those are ones that aren't technically installed per se. They're installed in a mode called editable, which means you can change it and then see those changes immediately in other ones. And then it also does ones that are not on GitHub as well. So some are just personal packages that I've made that I've never uploaded. So I know this might sound shocking to some of you, but I have a whole package dedicated to managing and organizing my music because I'm OCD. So it will also provide those ones as well. So it provides a very comprehensive list. The only downside with this is most of these packages aren't actually being used in your particular project. So it would be nice if there was a better way to kind of help filter down this list. So while this is an option for you, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. Just as a note too, I do provide some other documentation on arguments and stuff like this. So this all comes from the Python website, but I try to do my best to at least show you, what they look like and stuff like that. But again, ideally, it can kind of give you some insight as to things like that. So a package that I came across when initially I encountered this error was called pipRex. At least that's, I think, how you pronounce it. And so I really like this library simply because it does the main thing I wanted it to do, which was give me a list of the packages that I need in order for my project to work. So the packages that are dependent on my project, or I guess more specifically, the packages that I need in order for my project to run. So this one is not installed by default. So again, I will just say you have to install this one. I did provide information from the website as well, or the GitHub repo, and I do provide a link here as well. So I encourage you to read it if you have some time. It's a pretty neat library. But to use this particular one, you want to make sure you do pip install piprex. And then from here, you can actually run that particular module. Now, I will try to show you running it, and I'm going to show you an error I run into that initially I wasn't expecting until yesterday, apparently, because I think I updated it or something. But to give you an idea, let me change this back. Where is it? Here it is. So what you can do actually is you can actually provide a path to your project. That's fine sometimes, right? So you can just say, hey, here's the path. And then something you can also do is you can actually take an existing requirements.txt file and you can say, hey, clean it up, right? So go in there and get rid of the ones that maybe aren't being imported or maybe are on later version or whatever. So it does offer some enhanced functionality that does make your life a little bit better. There's a full list of options that you can pass through. Each one has their own benefits. Now, initially, when I ran this command, I encountered an error talking about, well, let's just run it to see what happens. We'll do this. Piprex, and let's see what happens. Yeah, you get this little char map, encoding thing, right? And then you're like, what's going wrong? Something's happening. To bypass that, you want to use the encoding option, and then you want to specify UTF-8. UTF-8. It does take a little bit. It's not there automatically. Now, in this situation, I did this on purpose. It comes up with this little warning. It says, well, hey, you're trying to overwrite your existing one. Are you sure you want to do that? In this situation, I'm okay with it because this is exactly what I ran earlier today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another one here that says freeze. And so, or it's not freeze, force. Force basically just says overwrite the existing one. So that's all that's saying. It's saying if there's a requirement file there, then all you need to do is just overwrite that one and you're good to go. Okay, perfect. And then you get this nice little message saying, great, it was saved. Go in and check it. And then when you see in this one, it's a lot simpler, obviously, right? So it's a lot more simpler. I don't have every single possible one that I possibly used. It's limited it to the ones that I need specifically for this project. So I would encourage you to use this one as well. I'm also going to share with you another tool that can be used in tandem with this one. This other tool is called Pip Depth Tree, I believe. So again, I provided an overview and I also provided a link to the website, to the GitHub repo. The reason I guess you would use this one is if you want like a more heavily formatted one, or if you're trying to do more complex operations behind just filtering the ones that are being used in the project. So there's things where you can say, hey, only include these ones that have these particular regular expressions. Like you can get some really complicated operations going on here. They also do provide a JSON output. Technically, Pip also provides that as well. But it's just interesting to see that they provide a little bit more detail and they might structure it a little bit differently. And again, it's just another way of giving you a different option, or maybe using this option in tandem with other ones. Now, just like piprec, you do need to install this one as well. So it would be pip install Pip Depth Tree, and then from there, you would just use it as you would expect, kind of like the previous one. You're going to have your command line arguments if you're going to do outputs and stuff like that. You just want to make sure you specify those as well. Keep in mind, a lot of the documentation on there is written for a Linux system. So for example, there is no grep command on Windows. And so you just want to make sure that when you're taking their examples, that you're not using the Linux example. If you're on Windows, you want to make sure you do the conversion. Because this is an issue I ran into, I think I provided a list. Yes. So we'll talk about this when we get here, but I do have a list of different commands and stuff like that if you need it. So, oh, damn it. There's a list here as well. So again, feel free to use it or stuff like that. I would encourage it if you get the opportunity. And personally, it's just neat kind of seeing everything that's out there. Also, I do want to show you that some of these outputs are a little bit different, right? So for example, if I write it to a text file, you notice how it's indented more, right? So I'm saying I need this one, and then this requires this, and this, and this, and this, and this. So it's basically giving you this like tree structure and saying, well, if you want to install this one, then you're going to have to also install this one, and then you're going to have to also install this one, and then these are going to depend on it as well. So it's giving you that tree structure to show all the dependencies that would technically have to be installed for everything to work. So just again, some additional information. Something that's also nice too is Pip does give you, again, not Pip Depth Tree, but this is just regular Pip. You also do get some formatting options as well. So for example, you can do a table output. And then again, if these are local installs, they will provide additional information as to some of the metadata, or just useful information to know, and then the name, the version, so on and so on. You can also do JSON output with Pip, so this is nice. So just again, a different way of seeing it. And again, you can also do it with Pip Depth Tree. You can also do a JSON output. In fact, Pip Depth Tree will actually go even further and provide things like, what is it, like images, JPEG files, and stuff like that. It's a pretty cool tool. I mean, I would encourage you to look at it if you get some free time, just because, I don't know, I think it's just neat. All right, so those are some tools that I wanted to share with you when it came to basically getting a list together of all your dependencies. Again, depending on your project, you might not even need to do this. Like, you might just be using like Beautiful Soup, for example. But in a situation like this where I might have 9 or 10 different packages together, it probably doesn't make a lot of sense to do that all by hand. I'm probably going to want to go and do this individually. So just keep that in mind. Those are some tools. You do want to make sure, if you're planning to use a Setup.py file, that you put those dependencies in your install requires. If you're planning to use a requirement.txt file, because you're not necessarily planning to, I guess, distribute. I don't want to say distribute, because you technically are, but if you're not like planning to put it on PyPi to, for everyone else to use, and you're going to go the requirements.txt route, that makes a little bit more sense as well. Alrighty, so what we're going to talk about next is we are going to talk. What are we going to talk about? I just lost my train of thought. This is great. I think we were going to talk about. Was it Pip? Oh yes, we're going to talk about that wonderful little file. Okay. Yeah, this is I really don't like this one. Only because it causes headaches. Actually, before we do that, let's actually spend a little bit of time on just regular pip. Because there's some things in here I do want to share, only because I know when I was going through the installation process, there's some functionality that it's nice to know it's there, especially when it comes to validating that your installation happened, or you need to get the file path of where it was installed. So, for example, you might want to list all your installed packages, right? Well, pip has a list command that you can pass through. And when you do that, it will list all of the packages that are currently installed. Now, there are some optional arguments that you can provide along with this command that will either do things ranging from formatting to filtering the amount of information that is sent back to you. I tried to do my best to give you some examples. So for example, maybe I want a list of all my out-of-date packages. So this might be important when you're trying to compile your list and saying, should I maybe update it first, see what happens, just things like that. So if you want to see outdated packages, it would be -o, up-to-date packages, U. If I want to show my local environment, I would do L, so on and so on. And then additionally, you can specify the format of that output. And again, just like our previous examples, you can specify those to an output file as well. Additionally, there is the show command. The show command is great when you need to get some more finer details on your particular package. So I've used this before as well if I need to validate where my package was installed, right? So for example, pip show td Ameritrade Python API. If I do that, it's a great way to get a nice clean output of things ranging from the name, the version, basically all the information you were seeing in your Setup.py file. But more importantly, it also provides locations and stuff like that. Now, because I constantly am making changes to it, I always have it in something called Editable Mode. Oh, that's what I was going to cover. Of course, I remember now. So this is a great way to get a link to that if I need to modify something or all this and that. Again, it'll make a little bit more sense when we talk about it in some finer detail. Additionally, it tells us the requirements for this project and then what are some other projects that require it. So that's handy too. It's good to know, where is my project being dependent on when it comes to PyPi and things like that. So again, this is just all information that helps you in understanding how you need to distribute, how you might need to document your project and things like that, right? That's really all it's intended to do. Just give you some clarity. I think there's like verbose. What does verbose do? I can't remember what verbose does. I think it's like more detail, basically. I can't remember. Verbose. Okay, there we go. Yeah, it just gives you more details, that's all. So you can see homepage, metadata version, and then classifiers as well too. So very good information, very helpful. There's a search command. So if you're not sure if you have a package installed, that's perfectly okay. You can just search. You can use the pip search and then the name of the package as well. You can also, well, actually, to be more specific, you can actually do like a PyPi search. I should clarify that. So this is just saying if a package exists on PyPi. There's a check one. This one's just saying whether there's basically whether you have the dependencies necessary in order to install a particular package. This is, again, it's just more information. Additionally, another popular command, just like pip install, you have pip uninstall. This will uninstall a library. There's a few optional arguments that you can specify. So you can actually say, hey, pip uninstall all the requirements in my requirement file. So that's an option as well too. Sometimes you might want to do that. And then there's the yes command. The yes command or optional argument basically says, yes, I don't want a confirmation. Yeah, so I don't want a confirmation. So normally when you uninstall, it's going to say, hey, are you sure you want to uninstall this? If you don't want that prompt to come up, you can do yes. Okay, let's talk about the next fun topic, development mode. So if you are like me, you will probably be constantly making changes to your libraries, right? Or your packages. And so you're going to constantly improve it. And so part of the process is you need to know how to install your packages to get them ready to publish, right? So you want to make sure you can import them correctly. You want to make sure you can test them correctly. And so one way you can do that is you can install it in what we call editable mode. And so I can't remember. I think it was editor mode or environment. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I used to call it something else, and I read it up and I was like, oh, it's just editable mode. I was overthinking it. But basically, the idea behind editable mode is it basically provides a link to your package in the package repository. This is just easier to show you. So I currently have my site packages folder open. I think I even have it on my File Explorer as well too. If not, I'll just open it in File Explorer. But basically, where you install all your Python packages when you do pip install, right? So what happens when you install it in editable mode is it will put these links, right? And all it does is it says, hey, if I want to use this particular package, point to this directory. Why would you do that in a sense, right? Well, the idea behind it is by only providing a link, you can make changes to your project real time, and then you can automatically test out those changes without having to do an uninstall and reinstall. So it's basically saving you the hassle of having to uninstall and reinstall every single time you make a change. So this is intended for individuals who are maintaining a package and don't want to have to necessarily go through that headache of constantly uninstalling and reinstalling. You can just have a link, make your changes, and those changes will be reflected right away. So you can see on mine, like I have a few. I have my GitHub manager, my Federal Register. These are all just pointing back to those particular projects that I have on. So it's very helpful to know that. I will give you one little forewarning. You got to make sure that it's not too different than the versions you have published, because I have gotten myself confused sometimes because I'm working on my editable mode one and I'm forgetting that I haven't necessarily pushed those changes to the actual repo yet, but I'm already using them in other libraries that I'm planning to push those changes to. So you just want to be a little bit cognizant of that, because that can cause issues, because then you're going to start pushing changes where you never updated the original library, but you're acting as if you did. So that's my little 5-second warning to you about doing that. So just be aware. Additionally, you don't have to necessarily have a local copy. You can actually do Git ones as well too. So you can actually do an install in editable mode from a GitHub repo. So that's actually pretty advantageous too. And I'm going to try doing this kind of probably going forward, only because I think that's a little bit easier. And then I can kind of just all keep it in one place. So there is what we call version control support. Now, if you do want to install something in editable mode, it's simply pip install -e, and then you need to provide the path to the project that you plan to install. Now, I tried giving you a long example here. So, if you're not in that directory and you want to provide that full path, you can do that. If you're currently in the root directory or the current directory, then all you need to provide is that little period at the end of it, and then it's going to assume that you want to pip install the root directory. So that is there as well. I highly recommend this. I loved when I came across it. I was like, oh God, this makes my life 10 times easier than constantly uninstalling. And then additionally, a lot of this content is coming directly from Python. So I try to do my best to link it back for everybody, where you're not having to go through all the headaches of finding it all. I love it. A ton of documentation, but it's definitely easy to get lost. What are we at? Oh yeah, we're going to cut it. Okay, so in the next topic, we're going to start moving over to PyPi. So I think at this point, other than this particular file, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail probably in the next video. We've talked about almost all the files we need in order to get things up and running. So what we're going to talk about next is PyPi, information that you need in order to kind of make your process easier. And then from there, I think we probably have enough to go through the process of uploading and distributing it. So if you have any questions at this point regarding, I don't know, the requirements file or any of that kind of fine stuff, or just pip in general, by all means, ask away and I will do my best to answer your questions. Otherwise, we will see you in video number 4.